I would caveat you this, that, you know, even if you take 98% of the stuff that I go over with you today, you know, you might be like, been there, done that, got it, you know, whatever. And, you know, the mind is always, you know, busy. There's a lot of attractions and distractions and all of that. But there might be just 1 or 2% that might have an impact that could perhaps change the trajectory of your life. And it's not because, you know, I'm saying it's just, I'm not smarter than any of you. It's just that I have, as Michael mentioned, I have a lot more years in the business world. And I remember, you know, myself, one time I was listening to a speech and I was doing that kind of same thing. You know, I was like, yeah, I get it, I got it, I know this, you know, and so, you know, I was very tempted to check out, as we do. You know, life is busy and we think about a lot of things, but all of a sudden, you know, there was a statement the speaker made that to me was definitely an impact, challenged me. And I think it was just that one moment of, you know, me paying attention to something. It was like that message was just for me. And those of you that maybe go to church, although we're not really going to church now, virtual or whatever, you know, have you ever just sat and listened to a preacher or speaker and you just kind of feel like, man, they're speaking right to me, right? You know, because the message was meant for you. And so there's things I'm going to talk about today that maybe one particular part was meant specifically for you. I don't believe in accidents or coincidences at all. I believe that we're here together for a reason. And so I always in life, I try to pay attention to the moments because, you know, we all got construction barrels on and we're all in the process of growing and becoming better each and every day. And you never know when that moment changes everything. And moment is the first 6 letters of momentum. So sometimes it just takes a moment to give you that momentum to move to the higher level that you desire. And so I do know this, and you know, my conversations with Mike, that and probably even our agency, and Mike went through a whole list of, you know, our SGA promotions directors and all that, and we are kind of a leadership factory. And so, but you know, there's look, in your career, mine, there's always times and seasons of disappointment. I would have to say, although, you know, Marcus and I was recognized as the SGAs of the year for 2019, you know, I look at 2020 and I have to say I'm very disappointed in our results. And I'm not here at American Income Life because I need more. You know, I have enough. You know, we could live the rest of our lives, and my kids could as well. Don't tell them that, but you know, without ever having a want or a need. That's the American income system. It's a very prosperous system. But the reason I'm still here is for impact. You know, to impact, influence, and impartation. You know, in people's lives. And if we're not doing things that make people say, can't believe you done it kind of stuff, like how did you do that? Then we lose a platform of influence. And influence is very important to me, and that's why I'm here. I'm basically here to do things that people can't believe can be done. And so, but here's some key words. I mentioned the disappointed. Disappointment is okay, because in life, we're gonna have lots of disappointments. But the one thing I have never been at American Income Life is the other D word, which is discouraged. When you're discouraged, it means that you take ownership to the disappointment. And discouragement is something that goes deep inside and prevents you from moving ahead in your life. It's okay to be disappointed, but never be discouraged. You know, it's a time right now that we're all thinking about, you know, New Year's resolutions. I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions. I know probably gyms and fitness centers are, because they get more memberships signed up, you know, at the beginning, January 1st. And a lot of those memberships, they end up dissipating. They're done in 3 months. We all have these ideas that January 1st is a day that, everything's going to be different, And so the thing that I don't like about it is because people resolve that is the day. And they tend to lose the understanding that every single day is a new year. Every single day. We could it doesn't matter what happened in the past, we could be a hero today. So every day that God breathes life in us, that we are able to live in that day, is a day that we can make new resolutions. We could throw away the old things, the distractions and attractions that maybe prevented us from moving forward in our life. And we could start a new season in our life. And, it's like part of that is kind of the realization that every day you could do like an analysis, analytics of where you are and where you want to be. And every day should hold that, thought. That am I better today than I was yesterday? Will I be better tomorrow than I am today? And so it's going to be a lot of what I talk about. And, I don't believe any of you, look, I believe everybody that raises a hand yes to the American Income Life deal, I believe there's something different in them because this is a different deal. It's not easy, 100% not easy. But I think for every single person that walks through the threshold, that walks through our door, and says yes to American Income, there's something inside them that says that they have something that has not played out yet in their life, and they just have not had the opportunity or the door or the path, but they see it in American Income Life. They know that there's greatness that they have, that if they only had a place to kind of let it all out. And so it may be, I think a lot of people walk through our doors maybe a little bit frustrated that they haven't been able to walk in the fullness of what they believe their giftedness, their talents are, their willingness to give maximum effort. And so I believe that when you first, all of you, when you first walked in the door, you saw something different here. But who wants to, look, we all want to play for a championship team, but who wants to play for a championship team, yet be resigned to sitting on the bench? I mean, it doesn't make sense, but I've seen it, as Mike mentioned, I'm my 39th year, and I've seen it happen so many times. And I often say that the road to success is strewn with bodies that were capable. And that probably, if anything, has disappointed me, more than anything else, has been seeing people that had great aspirations, that loved our culture, that were talented, but didn't have the willingness to do what it took in order to realize their expectations, their anticipations. And, I often say that, most people have a want to be wealthy, a want to be prosperous, but they don't have a way to. That's why the lottery system and gambling and everything plays such a big part in American lives, because that's our only way to. American Income Life, out of all my years, and I've seen a lot of deals, grass is greener kind of stuff and all that, but I've never seen anything other than American Income Life in this nation that gave people a way to more than American Income. But the key part of that is the other W is the will to. And I'm going to talk a lot about that. And I don't think any of you or anybody really wakes up in the morning and just wants to be average, right? That's not an American incomer, without a doubt. That's not you. You desire to be different. And so in that, there's something special in you. But, and I often say this, but there's nothing sadder for the world and for you than not living a life you were meant to live. Now, I know in talking to Mike that we have a young team here. In fact, I think Mike told me that 6 of his 9 MGAs are like brand new, just a young team. And, and I listened to the top leaders speak. Man, you've got some dynamic individuals there. Stacy and Sydney and Mark. Part of me just wants to say, hey, yeah, what they said, and we could all hang up and get on with our day, And, you know, and hey, Stacy, I'm glad you're a real person, because the world's a better place that you are. And, you know, and Mark, I do have some advice for you. And I sense, and just hearing you speak, that you're a humble guy. And, you know, when I often talk about, you know, the attributes of leaders, I talk about humility. The Bible says God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So who wants to be opposed by God, right? So I'd rather have grace. Grace is getting something that you don't deserve, you know? But I do have some advice for you after being married for 42 years. You don't want to tick off your spouse. That you don't want to do. So here's the deal. Here's what I did years ago with Nancy, is that I actually set up a bank account for her. And so what I did is, out of every sale, I gave her 10% in her bank account. And so she you know, back, you know, we weren't virtual back then, but she would hardly want me home before 10 o'clock at night, you know? So your wife, if you set that deal up or something like that, she'll just like keep you in your room. She'll want to spend no time with you. Not that that's a good thing. You always need to have a date night. You got to have a date night, make it very exciting. So for those of you who have spouses. Anyways, I do know that, that talking to Mike, he said that, that you have a goal, I think in 2021. Mike, sorry if he didn't announce it yet. I know he wants to do 6 million next year. I mean, just listening to the 3 leaders, I don't see how you could not. In fact, I would make 7 million. Mike, you remember that, you know, our big deal was, you know, back in 2007, doing 7 million in 2007. But, you know, if the leaders I heard from, Clayton, including you, the leaders I heard from today are an example of this team and this this group. You know, I got to say 7 million, man. I mean, you guys should be disappointed if you don't hit the 7 number. But anyways, listen, another thing too, I do know that, you know, Mike has really brought the original culture into, but he's added his spin on it, which is even better. But I know that there's been a lot of promotions out of the Vasu deal too. And so there's different ways to look at things. You know, sometimes when you have top people that are moved out, you know, sometimes you might get a little pushback, you know, out of that, but really you ought to be excited about that, because, you know, in fact, AIL's theme used to be, you know, step out so others can step in. In other words, when the Vasu group, like I know Nikki, you know, a favorite of mine, Nikki was just promoted. And so when you have these promotions, man, that leaves a lot of area for hierarchical promotions within your team. So I would look at that as like an opportunity, you know, that, you know, you want it to be like, you know, when Mike and Daisy shut their eyes at night, that, you know, they're thinking about promotions, who to promote, all they could do is see your face. You know, you want to be that person, because that's really, I mean, that's what we are all about. I mean, we're a leader. I know Mike, because, you know, being involved with him a number of years, that, you know, he sees everybody when him and his leaders make decisions on hiring, that they see that individual as a leader. They may not have it in their resume, they may not have walked in it yet, but that's their aspirations, for that person to move into leadership. And that's a real opportunity to American Income. I mean, where you could move into a situation, and it doesn't take a lot. You got to exceed some expectations, make sure you got quality work, make sure you don't mess up too much, you know? And so you'll be in an SA position, and you could build a team. I mean, there's only so much any of you could do in 24 hours, right? And so, but if you're able to build a team, then you have others, you know, working underneath you. And the great thing about American Income Life is that, I mean, not only could you become more prosperous, you know, but you're able to mentor others and pour into others. And there's nothing more satisfying than that, knowing that you did something, said something, was something that impacted somebody else and moved them ahead in their life. And all the while, you know, the overrides, the renewals, the bonuses and everything. Look, when I started with American Income Life, I came out of the real estate business, and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, you know, because in the sales business, I didn't see anything like renewals. But when I started with American Income Life, I could spend an hour with a family, help them make a right decision. And back then the renewals were 10 years, which was one of the best compensation packages in the entire insurance industry, 10 years. But I saw it as, oh my gosh, I could spend an hour with somebody, like I said, help them make a right decision. Maybe see that person in the grocery store 5 years later, not even recognize them, but I'm still making percentages on the premiums that they're paying for something that's so critical and urgent and important to their family. I thought, like, wow. But then, through the time that they, back then we had one bonus. It was a quarterly bonus. Every 3 months we got a bonus, and if it was $1,000 or $1,500, that was a big bonus, right? I mean, now it's weekly. And now we have lifetime renewals, and now we have hierarchy. We didn't have it back then. We had one hierarchical position, but now we have SAs, GAs, MGAs, RGAs. I mean, I've not seen a better time for opportunity at American Income Life. But here's the thing I noticed. There was a book written some years ago called Tipping Point. I don't know how many of you maybe read that book, but basically it talked about companies that in their history, there was a moment in time that was a tipping point that changed everything, changed the trajectory, accelerated it, multiplication. Everything was different. And so, when I read that book, I thought, like, boy, that's kind of the way our lives are. We have moments that are tipping points, but so sad that so many people miss those moments. I think right now that if you haven't already jumped on this bandwagon, that this is a tipping point for us. I mean, American Income Life, I was involved in the executive council when, the virtual came on board, and we could no longer go into people's homes, right? But within a week to 10 days, the company transitioned from in-home to virtual. And a lot of people freaked out, because it was a change, but truly it was a tipping point, because it was a moment that all of a sudden, the time, that you had to take before by traveling and, the gas and the stuff and everything, that all the machinations that went into, going to people's homes and then maybe traveling a couple hours and then you go to your first house and it's a stand-up, right? And the attitude, affect your attitude and everything. But now with virtual, and I hear some of you doing a lot of presentations virtual, sometimes I wonder, like, why isn't everybody? Like, the hours and hours that you save by not traveling should replicate itself in more presentations. It's such an opportunity. But what I want to talk about a little bit is I'm going to talk about when you feel you have a tipping point or a moment, again, which is the beginning of momentum. There's pushbacks. There's stuff that will tend to want to push you down. Like, there's just something in the atmosphere in the world that every time we decide that we're going to take a new path, a better one, that there's stuff that's going to just knock you down. It's just kind of the way. You almost have to expect it, that it's going to happen. And so, I'm going to talk about some things that might tend to push you back. And because you got to recognize, you got to understand the battle. It's part of the battle, and it's not, it's for everybody, but everybody has different battles. And sometimes the very thing that would take them down might not take another person down, but it's something that is given to you that will definitely could defeat you if it could. For instance, if I was coaching a boxer, and so what does a coach do? He's going in for a big fight. What do? You study the other fighter, right? And you look for the weaknesses. And in the study of that fighter, if I see that fighter is a sucker for a left hook, what do you think I'm going to have my fighter throw? Left hooks, right? And so guess what? That's for us too. That's the way life is. If there's something that will stop us or push us down or prevent us from reaching a higher level, life is going to throw that at you. And if you allow it to defeat you, guess what? Every fight you get into, you're going to get that left hook. What are your left hooks? And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. What are the left hooks that take you down? One of the first ones, and Mark, I think you alluded to it. It's comfort. Comfort I've said it before, is the enemy of destiny. And what happens is that when we get comfortable, there's no growth in comfort. And I'm going to give this example again, and sorry for those of you who heard me give this, but I love this example, so you always will hear it. Anyways, in fact, it was recently written up in the Spotlight about Rocky. Love the Rocky movies, right? And so, I mean, everybody loves a champion, you know, everybody loves a winner. But what people love more than that is someone who is not expected to win, but they do win, right? The underdog. Well, Rocky always made himself an underdog by the size of the challenge he chose. So when the challenge was like just very apparent, like greater than him, he would choose that challenge, which guess what? Moved him from a point of being comfortable to uncomfortable. But that's where growth is, that's where destiny is. And that's what Rocky did. So my caveat always is, make yourself an underdog. When you're doing those resolutions, make yourself an underdog by the size of the challenge that you choose. And working at home, I would tell you, hey, it's for me too. Like if someone wants to meet me, you know, out, whatever, a lunch, like typically I do a lot of charitable stuff and everything, and a lot of the directors and things want to meet with me and everything, and you know, want to do a lunch or whatever. It's like, well, can't we do a Zoom call? Could we do a Zoom, you know? So I find myself even kind of getting lazy just being here, you know, and I have to fight that. And you know, in the older I get and the longer I'm in business, I got to fight leisure almost. Like, hey Jim, why don't you just play golf or whatever? Yeah, I could. But that's, you know, that's the battle, because you lose, you know, the impact, you lose the influence. So working at home could be your enemy, and understand that, because it may move you into a place of comfort, but you have to push through that. You have to have discipline. Now, nobody likes discipline. I hate it personally. Discipline's hard, okay? But did you think you would ever excel without it? And if you fall prey to bowing out at a time of discipline, it's going to be in your face all the time. But when you learn to push through, all of a sudden, they're not throwing that left hook anymore. But you gotta get through. And one way that I remember it when I was in the field, before most of you were born, but when I was in the field, I remember I would always have these decisions to make. And Mike knows I often say 3D, decisions that determine destiny. So I would always have these decisions. You know, it could be late at night, I had some stand-ups, and I could rationalize it either way. I had a great day. Hey, I had a good day. I'd go home, I don't have to go back to those stand-ups, right? Or I had a lousy day. Let's leave well enough alone. It was a horrible day, I'm just gonna go home, right? So it was like, you know, making, you know, the decision, you know, to press in. Like, what would the person do who wrote a success book, you know? What would they do? And I always felt the decisions I made, although I knew that like something in me, like all of you, felt that there was a greatness out there, that it was in me. And that, but I always felt that when I had those decisions, the fork in the road, so to speak, that if I chose, like, what would the person who wrote the success book, what would they do? And if I chose wrong, would that be the very decision that would set me in a spiral on that path, you know, that would not lead to greatness or my destiny? So understand that working at home, you know, you're going to have to be disciplined. It just comes with it. And I find that you know, people like to be comfortable because it kind of feels good, but they've done studies. There's more stress in being comfortable than being uncomfortable. Well, that may be hard to understand, but except like they did a thing with like 9-to-5 workers, like factory workers and that, and independent contractors, salespeople, comparing the stress levels. There was more stress with people who worked a 9-to-5 job, like in a factory or whatever, because they had no control over their own destiny. And in us, there's inherent in us is a want for growth, is a want for accomplishment, is a want for more. And when that is pushed back, and you're told what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and you had a blueprint set ahead of you for how much you're going to make this week, every week, And it's somebody else's decisions above you, whether you make more money or not, or whether you work or not, whether you're laid off or not. There's a lot of stress with that. We have an unbelievable opportunity to work as much overtime as we want, to develop our own business, to move into a higher level and develop a team. There's nothing like it in America. It's amazing. Another detractor, and these are just things I discovered in years and years of business, is survival mode. There's so many people that live in a survival mode. It's just surviving, which is fear. And so you make decisions and you act based upon surviving rather than on accomplishment and growth. And I came to it in my early years as an SGA. It was a whole different business, back then. We had to be in a lot of red ink before we ever got in black ink. It's not like that today, but I remember sitting at my desk like this, and I had to make some decisions. And I discovered, like I had an epiphany, that I was making decisions based upon surviving and not out of growth. So I came up with the idea that, I'm going to make decisions as if I already had $1 million in the bank. I didn't, believe me. but I just came, because it's a mindset. It changed everything. So I started making decisions as if I already had. So then I moved out of the fear and out of the survival and more to making right decisions. Another detractor is living in yesterday. I often say yesterday is the enemy of today. So many people feel that today is going to be the same as yesterday. The same maybe failures in your past, or disappointments in your past, or discouragements, or offenses, or abuses, or whatever it might be, that today's going to be the same thing. And since people believe that, it ends up happening. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they end up walking in the same stuff today that they did yesterday, and they end up convincing themselves that they were right, because that's what they anticipate and that's what they expect. And I often say that I wish we all had an Etch-a-Sketch that we could just, waking up in the morning, we just shake off whatever happened yesterday, good or bad, because today holds whatever. There's miracles that could happen today. But if your expectations and your faith and your belief is that there isn't, then there usually isn't. And that's what you walk in. And so always think of today as a clean slate. Anything could happen today. Don't have a negative outlook on situations. Believe me, life will give you stuff, adversity. People will offend you. People will abuse you. People won't do what they're supposed to do, whatever. But don't dwell on that. You got to move out of that negative spiral. I say it's better to pronounce the light rather than address the darkness. For instance, I'm not sure in your situation, but you should have a simple thing like let's bring it in reality, like leads. Whatever lead, you could always complain about leads. Mark's got the best leads, that's why he's, So, but the idea is that, no, it's not like that. Whatever, to me, it's just amazing that we have a place to go, a reason to be there, and something to say. No matter the reason, whatever got you to be able to connect with somebody, and then to have that be a seed which produces multiplication because of referrals. I heard that mentioned from the leaders. That's an amazing thing, to have a place to go, a reason to be there, whatever it might be. Be it a referral, a D card, whatever, funeral leave, whatever it is, just to have that ability is just looking at the positive, have a positive outlook. But here's the thing, and Michael, no, I often challenge our people with this, but how do you know if you have a negative outlook? People have a negative outlook, don't know they have a negative outlook until they do an analysis. So I always challenge our people, take 24 hours and just think about what you think about. 24 hours. Write yourself a note, whatever you gotta do to remind yourself, just think about what you think about. You will be shocked. so much we think about is like pushes us down. It's stuff that makes no difference today, but we dwell on negative stuff that happened yesterday. And we just think about this stuff. And there's so many people that so hurt themselves because they so occupy themselves with thoughts that have no meaning whatsoever today, except to weigh them down and to push them back. Try that sometime. All right, I'm going to talk about 7. What time is it? I'm going to talk about 7 E's, and let me try to run through these quickly. I won't be able to expound as much as I'd like to, but let me just hit these, okay? And then we'll close out. The first one's evolve. We should be in an evolution process. Now, I don't believe in evolution, I believe in creation, but I'm just talking about our self-improvement, We should all be like, in fact, the definition of evolve is develop, progress, make progress, advance, move forward, make headway, mature, grow. And so we should all be evolving that way, that today we are a better person. We are more dynamic today because of what we poured into ourselves yesterday. Our culture is, and Mike's adopted it, mind, body, spirit, mind, body, spirit. If one of those are out of kilter, it affects the other two. You have to be strong in your mind, in your body and spirit, but you have to be intentional about that. You have to pour into yourself. You can't expect it's just going to happen because it doesn't. If anything, if you don't intentionally invade your life with positive things in your mind, your body, and your spirit, you will move back. You won't even realize it. But you'll be going backwards. It has to be an intentional invasion into your life, because the day has enough negativity and darkness, but that's why you got to keep pouring in the light. And so that's a process of evolving. And sometimes it's addition by subtraction. Sometimes we got to subtract things out of our life that are pushing us down. Marcus Smith, first partner I ever had, made Marcus a partner in 2006. In order for him to be in a position for me to choose him over the other choices that I had to be a partner and now be who he is today, he will tell you the story that he had to subtract friends out of his life. He had friends that were pulling him down, that just wanted to party, just wanted to hang out, and so he had to subtract. I mean, he loved them and everything, but he had to subtract them out of his life in order to add to his life. So it's addition by subtraction. Sometimes there's things that are holding you back, and you got to do your own self-analysis about that. What might be holding you back? What is wasting your time? Take a look at that. Also, you need to resolve, it's like that New Year's resolution I was talking about. Like, you have to understand that if you do, this is said so many times, if you do what you've done, okay, you're not gonna be able to get any more than what you got, So every day has to hold that thought. And so evolve. And there's one thing, let me just throw this in. They say, the first time you meet somebody, first appearances and everything, when you Zoom, because you and your background is pretty much, their connection when you do the virtual. And, if I were you, I would make sure that whatever's in my background, it elevates me. It like gives me a presence. And, if you got to print certificates to put them in a frame, whatever it is. Sometimes you can't make out what the certificates are. Maybe it was you came in first in your kindergarten, whatever, something, so just print it up, put it behind you in a frame, make yourself look like you're a doctor, because really all are doctors of insurance, right? So I would make sure that your presence, and we have the ability now with social media and everything to really give ourselves a presence, like who you are, what you're all about. I think it's very important, especially through virtual. And you can do anything behind you, So also, the second E, embrace. we need to embrace the opportunity that you have. And to do that, you have to embrace the company, you have to embrace the agency, you have to embrace the culture. And it's key to have that where, you know, you're imbued by the culture and you embrace it 100%. It can't be 98%, it's gotta be 100%. Enthusiasm plays another E, enthusiasm. And, you know, it's important to have that. You know, when I listen to the top 3 leaders, you know, Stace and Sydney and Mark, they all had that. I mean, didn't you get that? Like that sense of enthusiasm? That is so valuable. I mean, you've got to hold on to that. And, you know, part of that is understand, you know, your motive in this business. Like, what's your motive? Because it's easy to be enthusiastic when you feel you have a motive that is actually serving people, that your mission is greater than yourself. And because no longer will your attitude then ride on the waves of the day, you know, meaning bad day, my attitude's down, good day, my attitude's up, you know, because, you know, we all have those days. You know, you have days where you make sales, days where you don't, days where everything you wanted to happen happened, other days where everything you wanted to happen didn't happen, and everything you didn't want to happen happened, right? You'll all have that. But the important thing is, if you have a proper mission, you know, then, you know, which is greater than yourself, then you will have a motive that is not self-serving, but it's serving others. So you go from selfish to selfless. And when you have that selfless motive, you will be enthusiastic every day because you'll have a belief in what you are doing. And belief is a precursor to passion, and passion is a doorway to your potential, to greatness you haven't walked in, but it's within you. We have unlimited potential. You'll never ever reach the end of your potential, no matter how old that you get. You'll never be able to get your arms around it completely, but you gotta have a passion for what you do. And that brings out greatness. Educate, another E, educate yourself. And that, you know, educate yourself on your business. You are in a business of communication. Understand that. Yeah, we sell insurance, and that's good for the people. And they desperately need it. But the understanding is that the substance of what you have will not be embraced by the people, you know, unless you have the ability to communicate it properly. And I will tell you this, even though you're virtual, and I know a lot of people have a problem with that because they feel like, hey, I'm just more relational and, you know, in person. But virtual works. You could emit emotion and passion through the screen. How many of you, when you're on Facebook, saw you know, one of those videos where they do where you know, the soldier has been away from home for, you know, 10, 12 months in Iraq or whatever, comes home, surprises his daughter or his son, right? And it's like a surprise, and the little kids are crying, and I mean, maybe it's just me, I'm getting older, I tear up at almost about anything. But, you know, don't you like tear up? I mean, you're watching on the screen, but don't you tear up with that? I mean, doesn't it impact you? Or do you ever see one of those videos where you see, where they make a baby laugh, like almost uncontrollably? I mean, don't you laugh with that little baby? And so we have the ability to emit emotion, to be passionate, even though it's virtual. And so it's important to constantly educate yourself on communication, people skills, sales, all that. Effort. To do well here, you know, and again, it was spoken by the leaders. You got to give maximum effort. I mean, there's no other way to it. You can't be comfortable with that. You got to press in. You got to do more. To me, when I was in the field, again, I didn't think I was smarter than anybody, but I outworked everybody. I would not let anybody outwork me ever. And that put me in a position that when an SGA position became available, that, you know, I was there for that. And so, but it's all about effort. Think of it this way. If Mike Vasu announced today that he was going to make a change in the compensation system, that instead of commission, that he was going to pay you $150 for every presentation that you made. But he was just going to do it this week. $150 for every presentation. How many would you do? And understanding that, how much more would that be than what you usually do? The reality of it is, with the closing ratios and the average premium in your agency and the commission, you actually make more than that. If you look at what your income is based upon your sales. And also there's another thing. I say, like, what would you do today if you knew you couldn't fail? If everything you did today would be successful, how much more would you do than what you normally do? And if inside your thought process you're thinking, man, a lot more if I knew I couldn't fail, and that was way above what you normally do, well, you have to deal with that. Because you always should think that everything you're going to do, you're not going to fail. And you should have that kind of effort. I talked a little bit about this E a little bit before. It's called, erase. We have a very forgiving business. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. You could be a hero today. You need to, yesterday is a thief of today. Don't let yesterday rob your today. Anything could happen today, as long as you believe anything could happen today. Excuses, another E, that's another pushback. We have a thing, I learned in Psychology 101, a thing called the defense mechanism. That's where if you don't achieve the desired goal, if you feel like you failed at something, whatever, there's a defense mechanism that provides an excuse. So it like protects you against owning, that failure or that lack of achievement, whatever it is. Don't ever allow excuse, whether it's legitimate or not, because they both, you can have an illegitimate excuse or a legitimate excuse, and they both are the same. They both are the death of growth. Because if you don't accomplish something that you wanted to accomplish in the day, and you make an excuse for it, it's somebody else's fault, it was this reason or that reason, again, legitimate or not, it becomes the answer to the issue. Because if something stopped you, whatever it was that stopped you, and you take an excuse for that, that becomes an answer to that situation. And when that situation comes up again, guess what? It's going to be the same answer. You're not going to press forward or move through it. It's very important that rather than thinking why something didn't happen, think how it could have happened. So you set your mind on a path of positivity, and you set your mind on a path of figuring out how to get through that event or that situation if it happens again. Because if it happens again and you thought through it and you came up with an answer, then you'll be able to move through it and won't stop you anymore. Understand that every situation that we're in, we have an opportunity to make a memory. It doesn't matter if you're purchasing something in a store, you're in a restaurant with a server, or wherever you're at, you have an ability to make a memory with that individual. Always think it's 24/7, not just in business, because if you just relegate these ideas to business, it's not going to happen. It's got to be a lifestyle. So in everything you do, and you have to think that every person that crosses your path, that you were meant to impact, to make a memory, a positive memory in that person's life. I'm sure that all of you have a memory of something that happened, perhaps even in your childhood, that you remember. Could be good or bad, right? But maybe something a teacher said to you, your parent said to you, a peer said to you, something positive that you still remember today. And maybe even has impacted your life. Maybe even affected your thought process about yourself. And so then perhaps, guides your actions. Understand that when we're honored to cross paths with anybody, certainly virtually when we talk to people, we have an opportunity to make that positive memory that will be with them forever. That's what it's all about. And when you think about that, it makes us a little bit more exciting, And I often say, and I'll just close with just two things. I often say, and Mike mentioned, you know, I am born again Christian, and so I always engage God in everything I do, because I often say that what I could do by myself is actually pretty boring, you know, but what me and God could do together, well, there's nothing we can't do. And I know when I engage God in the midst of the day or a situation that, well, the Bible says, if God be for you, who could be against you? And then I expect miracles to happen every day. And so I think that's key to everything we do. And then we're able then to start to see with his eyes, not our eyes. We're able to start to see situations and people with his love and his goodness and his want for everybody to have a better life rather than our own selfishness. And believe me, it's a battle every day. When they ask me sometimes, when I have time to do a Q&A, which definitely not today, sorry, I took way much more time, but you know, they asked me like, what was one of the biggest obstacles I had to get over to achieve where I was at that day? And I always say, me. I had to get over me. Number one obstacle in my life. And when I was able to get through that, and it's not something you could all of a sudden pronounce that, hey, I won that battle for good. It's every single day getting over self. And when you're able to do that and see that you're not at the top of the triangle of your life, but more on the bottom to serve more, you know, all of a sudden things start to be attracted to you. Doors start to be open to you. New paths, better paths, well-lit paths, paths of righteousness, goodness, prosperity. And you know, those are all, that's why we're all here, right? Listen, I'll end where I started. You guys are special. And that's why you're here. And you were meant to do great things. But you got to understand the pushbacks. You've got to believe in the greatness that God breathed in you. And I'm just hoping for all of you that you have an amazing, awesome 2021. Thanks, guys, for your time. I took more than I should have.